welcome to another exciting edition of Million Dollar Peddlers. I'm Paper Guy.
And I'm Mr. Magazine.
And actually today we got a request from one of our viewers. And by all means, put down below any ideas that you have for the channel. It may take us a little while to get to them. We do read them all. We do respond to you. But this one comes from a viewer named Paul. And he requests, could you do a video of how you keep your items organized and your system for numbering them? Thanks. And let me tell you, it's important that you do so. Why don't I start? Because you've got a much more involved system than I have, and necessarily so. Your warehouse is a little bigger than my house. But when I originally started, what I did, and do not do this, what I did was when I listed stuff, if it was a magazine, it went in a magazine box and it was all alphabetized. If it was a comic, it went in a comic box and I alphabetized it. If it was a postcard, it went on top of the mantle in a little postcard box. If it was a book, it went in a book box, etc., etc., etc. And finally I said, oh, I got to start numbering stuff. So then what I did is I kept a Google document and box E1, eBay 1, and I would type out the books that were in there, and those were only the books. But then, to make it even crazier, if they were smaller size brochures, they went into a comic box. Problem I ran into, it works wonderfully when you first list something.
Right.
3 years from now, I sell something, and I look at it, and I go, now, was that a magazine? Was it a brochure? Was it an oversized magazine? Because I had oversized magazines in a different spot. I also had entertainment magazines different than I did... like the men's True magazine and all that kind of stuff. So then I would look at it and say, well, where would it be? Then I ran into yet another problem. How much time do you like to spend organizing?
0. 1 second.
I might be a little ahead of you. I might enjoy doing it for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
A lot easier to list. So then stuff started getting piled. And then I had a pile of magazines, and occasionally I would grab a handful and put them upstairs, but then they didn't always get in the right spot in the box. They went on top of the boxes, and so on and so on. And it was getting to the point that I potentially could spend half an hour looking for one item.
Oh, yeah.
It just could happen.
Sure.
And then finally I said, I can't do it like this.
Yeah.
So eBay offered the SKU, the custom line on there for your custom SKU. Now, it may not automatically show up when you're listing stuff, but if you go search the web on how to make it show up, it will show up. And so now what I do is I've got my magazines would start with an M. My eBay books would be EB. And then when I list something, I put in there, I'm going to list this card, small card over here. I'm going to put it in box S2, which stands for small, because it's small enough to fit in a card box. S2 is right here. And so then when it sells, if you go to look to print out your labels, your list of items awaiting shipping, it will list on there with your SKU all the various boxes. And then I'll look at it and go, okay, I got to go to box M12 and M16. And I go in the basement, find the items that I need, bring them back up. So that's kind of how I do it. And again, there's no right or wrong way to do it. I think the most important thing is that you have a system in place. Because again, when you're small and you're just starting out and you got 20 items, it's not too hard to find those 20 items.
Right.
Plan ahead. I did not. And I cannot imagine all of the potential listing time that I wasted trying to find things. Because again, when you're small and you got 50 items, it's not that hard. You got 50 items, and oh well, I know that I don't necessarily want to pile all the same kind of stuff together, so you kind of keep it apart. But again, 5 years afterwards, is it a big magazine or is it a small brochure? I'm not sure, because again, another error that I made back in the day is I didn't always list the size of the item.
Right.
If you do that, that will also help you.
Yeah.
So that is how I do it. I use the custom SKU, and I put the various things, together by type, magazine, comic, et cetera, with the custom SKU. You do something a little more elaborate, and you don't use the custom SKU, and I know the reason why you do it, but why don't we start there? Why don't you use the SKU line as opposed to you use the title line? Why is that?
Oh, well, our pullers need to know ahead of time what box they're going to take everything off. So it's got to match. The listed item has to have our date. We call it a date code. inventory code.
Right, but you could put that in the custom SKU.
True. We do that with Amazon though now, because we use a Celebrate and it wouldn't show up on when we print orders. I think.
Well, and the thing with with Amazon is I believe the way you have to do things, that SKU does show up right away. Whereas
they changed it. I think at one point it didn't show up, but now it does. Yeah.
Whereas if you have your eBay orders, what doesn't show up on the eBay postage label?
The SKU.
So then, with the way your system is set up, if you use the SKU line, you then would have to have the employees go to the computer and type each item in and find the SKU, as opposed to as it is now, they've got the pile which has where you find it at right on the postage label. So for you, that definitely the SKU would not work.
No,
the way you have things set up would not work.
It'd be a nightmare. Yeah, absolutely. But we started around 2020 something years ago. So back then I just used my garage at my business, and we had boxes of records, comics, kind of like you did. And then I think it was 2009 we started getting heavily from 1,000 listings to 5,000 or 10,000 listings. So then, we were alphabetizing. Paperboy was helping me alphabetizing records, alphabetizing, thousands of comics.
All right, let's stop. Let's stop for 1 minute. What is the problem that we have found with the unnumbered, we call them unnumbered, the unnumbered Amazon records? What is the problem that we're finding?
Well, we're not finding them, number one.
Well, that is the problem. I think the biggest problem is you alphabetized them one way, and I pretty much followed the same way you did.
Right.
But there were other people involved in alphabetizing them as well.
Correct. Yeah.
And is J. Giles band under J? Is it under G? Now, I would have put it under J. You would have put it under J for J. Giles. The other person might have put it under G. Or sometimes they put it under the album
Well,
name.
what if it's the J? Then
Some people put it under T. Right.
So
and
it's a nightmare, the stuff from 2010. Then we got smart in 2011. Said, let's date code these boxes. We're going to put the date on there. Well, the mistake we made for that whole year was the day and the month, but not the year.
Guess what? What is today's date? We're doing this video a little bit earlier than you see it. I think it's the 20th of December, 12/20.
Yeah.
Guess what next year has?
21?
A 12/20.
Oh,
Guess what the year
12/20,
after has? A 12/20.
Yeah.
So that
exactly.
you found that out pretty quickly as well.
So I think in 2011 we would have the day, the month, and one initial of the lister. So it would say 0112C if I did it. So which was great for that year, but now we're nearing December into 2011. What are we going to do? We have to add the year onto it.
Yep.
So that was our system. So it was the day, the month, the year, the lister, and sometimes it might be a different code if it's a box 2. So it'd be like 1201, 11, JD1, JD2, whatever. So, but the listing has to have that somewhere in the title, the description, whatever, and then we match them up when the item sells.
Yep. And that's that seems to work well overall. Are there ever any problems?
There's always problems.
Well, yes. Okay.
We had the listers were date coding the box after they listed them, so the listing could be wrong. It could be a number off. Mixed boxes. It does happen, but not very often. But
and that's one thing that you do regularly when you do have a problem. What is the first? I tell you, I need a 12/22/12C, and I can't find it. What is the first thing you tell me?
If it's eBay, we look and see when it was listed, the list date, to make sure the year is correct. The date matches up for the most part. So you got to make sure that first of all, and then you have to check boxes right near.
There you go. Check the boxes around it. And that happens with even me with my system sometimes because what I do, which you don't do, and you couldn't do it as you're set up now. And one reason why you couldn't do it is because a number of the listers are not at the warehouse, whereas I'm at my house. But what I do is I don't consolidate per se, but if I go in the basement and I've got a stack of oversized magazines to list, I may notice that box E48 has a fair amount of room in it. And I start listing oversized magazines to E48. But at some point, there's no room left in it, but I've still got 10 more magazines to list.
Right.
So then what I say is, well, I've got a pile more to list. Where else could this go? Oh, E36. So then I start listing in an E36. Guess what I don't always remember to do on the first listing?
Change it to the new.
Change it to the new
That's a
box.
common mistake. My listers do the same thing.
So then I'll be looking, going, it says E48, but it's not an E48. A trick, and I know Auction Professor said this as well. You go and you check the box, or you check your listings on that date to see what happened. And wait, let me check. Sure enough, there it is. It just happened to me yesterday, as a matter of fact. I had a brochure that was supposed to be an M15. And I went through that 3 to 4 times, and guess where it wasn't?
M15.
And I've got 36 magazine or 40 magazine boxes. I didn't really relish the thought of going through all 40 of them.
God.
So what I did is I did a search, and I said, hey, the other things I listed that day were all in M16. Take one guess where that brochure was.
We know. No, it wasn't in
No,
there?
it wasn't.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
M16. Very good job. So, and again, that does work. It is a little trick to use. Take a look at where other stuff has been listed. But one other quick thing, and it kind of brings it up because I know a lot of people were impressed with your warehouse, but one problem that you are beginning to bump against is room.
Oh, yeah.
What do you do for consolidation?
So the easiest things to consolidate are the toys. So,
Okay.
because there's 20 in a box, and after-
4 sell and it's half filled because the 4 biggest
and
ones
it's-
sold.
I every couple months I actually consolidate the toys down. I'll just mix 2 boxes and then write both codes on both. And another mistake, don't make this mistake. We did it years ago because employees sometimes are in a hurry. Put the code on both sides of the box. Because
No, do put it on both sides.
Do
Yes.
put it on both sides of the box. We didn't years ago. So now when they're taking off the shelf, they're siphoning through it. Well, sometimes they'll twist it and put it back the other way, and now it's either blank. It could be a reused box with a different code. So you don't want to make that mistake.
And one other thing, and I actually put it on all 4 surfaces, all 4 main sides of the box. I don't put it on the bottom. But what did a couple of people try to do? I believe you had said they tried to do it right away, early on, and then you quickly told them not to do it. Weren't they trying to put it on the tops? The box tops?
Well, fragile they were putting on the tops, and sometimes the codes.
Yeah, and the problem with putting the date code on the top is those box tops get swapped off easily. And another thing, too, is if you're using the banker boxes, they will get smooshed a little bit. So then all of a sudden it's almost flat, and here you are trying to look for a date, and there's no date, and you got to stand up and look over the top of it to see what the date is. So what do you do with non-toys as far as consolidation goes?
We haven't done too much of it since we've been at the warehouses. We've had lots of room, but now we're
starting to bump
to
up
the
against
point,
the edges, yeah.
We have some room for growth, about a year, 2 years maybe, without consolidating as far as magazines go.
Or 20 years if you stop by.
That is
Did
true.
I say that?
That's very true, but who wants there's no fun in that.
No, there really isn't.
But definitely we're going to need to make some room. So what I have done in the past, I went to some old listings from 10 years ago. We just ended them, took them off the shelf, made some room, and we stored them elsewhere. Some stuff I even ended up throwing out because we would never get to them. Or another thing, in the course of 10 years or for 20 years, they get damaged in and out the box of some of these magazines. And, if they were $5 and $10 magazines then and they're all damaged now, what are they worth?
Well, and that's not entirely what you did either. What did you do? But I love putting you on the spot.
God.
Well, you're going to get this one right, though, because you did it.
Okay. But my memory's not all there.
Oh, yeah, good point. What did you do on a couple of the magazines in some of the boxes? I remember you telling me one specific thing. How did this not sell?
Yes.
And then whether it was hidden from eBay view, whether it did sell and somebody couldn't find it, whether it just was listed at an auction and didn't get relisted, whether the wrong one in the box was pulled and sent out and the guy got the wrong one but was happy with it and never contacted you.
Right.
Whatever reason, there were some things in those boxes
Oh, yeah.
that actually were good.
Toys especially, because Amazon has been known they just suppress things, they kick them off for whatever reason, high pricing potential, or and so we had a lot of stuff. So we'll either relist it back on Amazon or we'll try eBay with it.
Or some of the eBay stuff, because I'm thinking of a couple of the boxes you had that you just had them relisted, and guess what happened when you relisted them with a better listing?
Yeah, they sold within a week or two.
And it was one of those things where you were looking, saying, didn't even note that Prince was on this, but Prince was on the cover.
Yeah.
And so then you relist it with Prince on the cover, and it sells.
You get an amateur lister 10 years ago that didn't know too much about it, and gave it a crappy listing. Now you got better listers that scan them. They'll take a few minutes, look inside the table of contents, and give it 2 or 3 examples of celebrities on there instead of like one.
Yeah, so that's definitely another thing that you need to kind of plan for is it's great that you have box E1 today. Hopefully, 6 months from now, that box is half full. Now you got to figure out how are you going to replenish the box. Now, if you've got an infinite amount of territory, you'd never have to replenish it. You just keep
Right.
adding on.
Yeah.
But for most of us, at some point, you start bumping up against it and you have a half-filled box E1. Do you fill in box E1 with the listings you do today? Do you find that box 4 is half filled and now you put box 1 and 4 together and put both markings on there? And these are all things that you definitely need to plan ahead because it will happen to you, and hopefully sooner rather than later, because that means you're doing very, very well. But we were kind of caught flat-footed. YouTube wasn't around back in the day. There wasn't anybody we could watch, and we've been through the battles on these kind of things.
Oh yeah.
And I do want to tell you, it's great that you got a fully, box 1 is full today. Think ahead 6 months, a year, year and a half as to what your plan will be to handle 2 half-filled boxes or 1 half-filled box or whatever. There's no right answer, but be ready. It will happen, and again, hopefully sooner rather than later. Yep. So we will see you next video. Thanks for watching, and if you could hit the like button, really appreciate it. It definitely helps the channel. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Big,